That not only really confused me, it also made me question just how genuine some of these people's analysis of the game was. Games certainly don't come anywhere near the best movies and books in terms of quality storytelling. To then take that incident and smear the guy who got severely hurt is so disgusting. What's up everybody, casual commentary, you know how it goes. Let's talk about the new Last of Us. Full disclosure, I have not played it yet. I don't have a PS4, so I probably never will. But I have watched quite a lot of other people playing it, and I've been reading a bunch of forums trying to gauge the consensus around the game, and a lot of people online seem to be very disappointed or straight up hate the game. And yeah, some people I think are mad about the buff woman and the lesbians. However, I don't think that's like the main driving force behind a lot of the criticism. I genuinely think that most people just didn't want the game to go the direction that it did with its plot, which is fine and understandable. Some of the major plot points just doesn't hit them well. However, when I see people being like super critical and analyzing aspects of the story and why it's poor writing and how it's laughably childish, and you know, that should be good, right? It's what I encouraged in my previous video about Bioshock Infinite, that people should engage with games a little more critically. So while that is good, it also kind of confuses me. So one of the reasons it confuses me is the level of criticism seems a little disproportionate for the quality of the game, and when compared to other games that fell down very similar pitfalls, like Bioshock Infinite or Uncharted or even the first Last of Us. Go to any thread discussing this game and the reactions are mixed to say the least, but usually very negative. Whereas for those other games, it's almost always exclusively positive comments. Last of Us 2 on Metacritic right now has like a 3 out of 10. I'm gonna go ahead and say it's probably not really quite that bad. Or like on the livestream fail subreddit, there's been post after post after post over the last few days of streamers just milking it, you know? Oh, this game is so cringe, bro, it's so bad, oh my god. Does anyone else think it's really weird that Joel was battered by a fridge with the golf club so early? What the hell? And everyone in the comments jumps on that bandwagon. Kinda reminds me of the hate Battlefield 5 received a few years ago. Like people like center in on this one product and just go at it really hard. And like that level of intense scrutiny is a bit weird for a game that at its worst is maybe slightly cringy and mediocre. Like not only is the criticism disproportionate, people would sometimes cite those other cinematic games I mentioned, like Infinite and Uncharted and stuff, that in my opinion have pretty glaring flaws in similar ways to The Cringe of Us in terms of badly written characters or childish plot, but they cite them as like examples of great storytelling and contrast it with The Last of Us 2, which makes me think there's something else kind of going on. I'll get to what that is in a bit. So I saw a lot of people talking about how you should make players empathize with certain characters and why it failed in Abby's case. You know what, there could be merit to what they're saying, but yet a lot of these people were masquerading around as though The Last of Us 1 was this incredible masterpiece, and how dare they kill the super beloved Joel. And I'm just like, what? That not only really confused me, it also made me question just how genuine some of these people's analysis of the game was. It's Naughty Dog, so the dialogue and the voice acting was really good, and the characters had something to them unlike a lot of games. But other than that, the story in the first game was mostly boilerplate zombie stuff. Not some masterfully written brilliant thing, it was okay. And the most important part for me, how the hell did these people come away from the first game still empathizing and relating so strongly with Joel? Joel ends up as a sad old psycho killer, right? Like I'd get it if the whole story was like the first 15 minutes, but then you fast forward 20 years, the world has gone to shit, Joel is a depressed murder hobo that just goes around whacking everyone, like hundreds of people throughout the game. And then at the end he murders an entire scientific facility and destroys any hope of humanity restoring itself, all because he wants to continue with this Ellie being his dead daughter stand-in delusion. Like I understand his motivations, I don't think he's a badly written character, but I don't empathize with him anymore, and that's fine. He's not your standard protagonist, completely fine. But why would I care about this man dying? People acting as though they lost some hero to look up to? That's like still thinking Walter White is the good guy when you're in season 4 of Breaking Bad. You know, he's been a piece of shit for a good while now. Like I enjoyed Walt's story, but I stopped empathizing with him ages before the end. Imagine after doing all the stuff he did, all the lives he ruined, if he just went on to beat his cancer and have a peaceful life. And it's portrayed in a way that we're meant to be happy for him? Like that would have felt pretty wrong. That's similar to Joel. I don't get the people who are like, oh, seeing this beloved character who I spent so much time with get unceremoniously killed like this was so messed up. Wow, my video game surrogate daddy, I wanted to play with him. It's like, what? Or people complaining about like the gratuitous way he died? Man, Joel didn't deserve that, bro. Like, did they even play the first game? I don't know, man, Joel himself was brutal as hell. And both games overall had so many like incredibly violent scenes. I don't know, I have no idea how people came away feeling that way about Joel. In fact, they probably should have left the Joel and Ellie story completely if they were gonna make a sequel. In fact, I don't know how people didn't really see this coming until they saw the leaks, of course, because Joel and Ellie's arc had kinda run its course. There was nowhere for it to really go after the end of the first game, other than one of them dying. And that would almost always be Joel, right? Because Joel's already like an old dude, right? And he's already lost a daughter, which shaped so many of his actions in the first game. So if Ellie dies, what would then happen to Joel? Like, he would get another Ellie and just repeat the first game over again? Okay, anyway, I'm rambling. Actually, side note about Uncharted, I could never care about Nathan Drake either. And unlike Joel, it seems like he is supposed to basically be your standard hero protagonist. And that always annoyed me. Listen, you can make all the smart-ass funny quips you want and try to write this character as some sort of charming renegade, but if his day job involves doing ethnic cleansing so he can steal a bit of gold for himself, yeah, I'm gonna think he's kind of an irredeemable piece of crap. Okay, let me get back on track a little. Look, I'm sure there are legit grievances you can have with The Last of Us 2's writing, I want to make that clear, but I just find it implausible that so many people suddenly became like insane intellectual critics, analyzing how the theme of revenge was poorly executed, about how unsubtle the message of the game was, when you consider the kind of reading they came away with from The Last of Us 1 and other so-called AAA cinematic games, which all deserved at least somewhat similar levels of criticism, by the way, but never got them. So I wonder how much of this is people genuinely having these criticisms, and how much of it is just them tumbling along with the bandwagon and parroting a few quotes that they read to justify their preconceived notions of the game. And I think part of that is possibly because of the SJW agendas coverage that the game got. I think a lot of public perception, and disclaimer, I am aware that the people complaining online is probably a very vocal minority. The online discussion around games account for a very small percentage of people who actually play it, but I think a lot of that discussion, or the way it slants, is determined by the early coverage that game receives. So BioShock Infinite was deemed a masterpiece, so it remained a masterpiece for years, until relatively recently where opinions are a bit more divided now. Similarly, if some big YouTubers who covered the leaks negatively actually pretended to have like a positive outlook on it, I'm sure a lot of the people bitching right now wouldn't be. I'm almost convinced of that. My opinion of people has diminished a lot in the last few years. I think a lot of people are just sheep. They think they feel a certain way about things, but really they're just regurgitating something someone else said because that's how they think they should feel about it. They want to fit in with the crowd, and thus the circle jerk ensues. A lot of people like to think of themselves as like free thinkers who always says it like it is. You know, they'll always speak their truth or whatever, but very rarely do you actually find people that practice that. Usually people don't have good foundations for their beliefs. They just say whatever they can to fit in. I don't know, I'm not saying that if you criticized it, you have to be a regurgitating sheep or something, and maybe I'm being a narcissistic asshole by suggesting that the people on forums aren't completely genuine, but I think it's somewhat true. I think a lot of people are very prone to conforming and base even some of their stronger opinions on things by looking at others and feeling how they think they should feel. This is all very subconscious, but once a bandwagon starts leaning a certain way and starts to gain a little momentum, people will just go tumbling along. And look, I get it, we're all susceptible to that to some extent. Like, if everyone I ever met told me that, I don't know, hats are evil, then I'd be like, yeah, hats are evil, of course they are, look at them. They sit on your head, for God's sakes, they try and suck your brain power. Of course they're evil. Like, I'm sure you all have some personal experiences where you can kind of relate to that feeling. So for example, I have a friend who told me that they used to kind of pretend to not like house music because the circle of friends they hung out with would sort of denigrate the type of person who does like that music. But this isn't like an actual like explicit pretending as though they knew what they were doing. They weren't actively thinking like, oh, I actually like this music, but I have to lie and make fun of it so that my friends do not mock me, reject me, and I will be left without a tribe. Right? No one actually thinks in those terms, but that is kind of the underlying process sometimes. Like, this friend recently started to listen more to house music, and they were like, you know what, this shit kind of bangs. And I think I always thought that. So yeah, basically, I think some people had strong preconceived opinions because of hefty negative coverage early on. Like, there were so many streamers playing it on release day who started up the game obviously already just looking to start memeing about it. And they used whatever they could to justify that opinion after the fact. I mean, at least people are actually flexing some critical muscles, and it shows that maybe gamers won't always just gleefully bend over to any game that attempts to be the least bit cinematic. So I mean, that's a good thing that came out of this. And again, to make it clear, I'm not saying that people's criticisms are wrong here, even if they all just basically parroted that one Polygon review. God, I saw people quoting from that almost verbatim so many times. But that doesn't invalidate the actual points. It's just elevated to such a weird degree that it doesn't really feel like a normal discussion. It just feels more like people primed themselves up to just hate on this, right? Listen, I don't want to be harsh, but most video games have horribly written stories, okay? I don't really see The Last of Us 2 as exceptionally bad in this regard. Video games are fun. I love the experience of playing games, but typically they just don't do stories very well. Even the ones that are usually highly rated almost always actually just end up being straight up mediocre, if not completely shit, when it comes to the story. Games certainly don't come anywhere near the best movies and books in terms of quality storytelling. I don't care if you disagree, it's the goddamn truth, alright? At least for like AAA big budget cinematic stuff. Most of them are littered with inconsistencies in plot or tone, they rarely say anything interesting, and whatever half-baked themes they do have, they'll try to batter you over the head with it in a really unsubtle way. Gaming has a long way to go before critically acclaimed stories are actually consistently worthy of that praise. I usually play games for the gameplay, or to just look at the pretty vistas and stuff. And if it happens to have good writing, then that's a pleasant, surprising bonus. The frustrating thing is, games have a huge untapped potential to tell stories in a really rich way, because you can actually play as the characters. You know, there's a level of interactivity that's not available in other mediums. There's a difference between being told about a world, or being shown it, and getting to experience it. Right? You can transmit so many ideas in really interesting ways in games. Firstly, the story has to inform or contextualize the gameplay, right? But also the opposite is true. The gameplay should ideally lend itself to the tone and plot of the story and give us some information about the characters and the world you occupy in a way that feels organic and true. For example, you seriously can't write a charming nice guy protagonist that you clearly are meant to root for if he goes around caving people's skulls, murdering hundreds like it's nothing in gameplay. There's a weird disconnect there. Or in the case of The Last of Us 2, you probably shouldn't have this great revenge plot where your character goes through killing a ton of people to get to her nemesis, only to suddenly realize, oh, I shouldn't kill her, that makes me bad. It doesn't track well in your head, right? Games just often have this disconnect between what the gameplay is telling you and what the actual plot or the writing for the characters are telling you. Maybe because the majority of gamers find it hard to have fun unless the game they're playing are just power fantasy trips. But regardless, I consider this bad storytelling. And look, gaming is a fairly new medium, so we will get there in time, don't worry. I'm not just wanting to shit on games here. And I recognize that people way more talented than me work on these for long ass hours, right? But I do strongly believe that games have a long way to go before the very best stories in gaming can match those in movies or in books. Oh, and one more thing. The straight up bigoted and like transphobic elements of hate in this game, for this game I should say, does exist. I've seen a lot of crazy posts. I just don't think that that's the majority of people. Although a weirdly large amount of people are like, Abby's body is not only unrealistic, it's literally impossible for a woman. And I'm like, wait, really? I mean, sure, it's like 99th percentile, but impossible? I don't think so. Otherwise, what is like Serena Williams or Ronda Rousey, right? And those guys aren't even like bodybuilders, so there'll be quite a lot of women that are even bigger than that. But yeah, I've seen a lot of like blatantly transphobic shit memed around, or you know, some shit about how this is forced woke degeneracy that's bringing about the end of Western civilization. The usual dumbass malarkey. So it's not insignificant. But yeah, I know this is a bit more unhinged and not very measured takes by me with a lot of substantive evidence or like genuine good arguments, but I'm just riffing here. If you want like serious analysis, go watch my video on Infinite, which honestly, that was so much fun to make. It's overall like one of my favorite videos. So if you haven't seen it, do check it out. You know, I was thinking about this. I don't think I'm the kind of guy or channel that will ever go viral or like blow up or whatever. I mean, it's possible, I guess, but I doubt it. I genuinely don't think my videos are good enough or appeal to a broad enough audience yet. And I certainly don't upload regularly enough. A lot of my content is literally just my opinions and my arguments, right? I don't have like a crazy gimmick, I'm not insanely funny or incredible at editing, although it has improved a lot. I don't have like a cool British voice that makes me sound smarter than I really am. I'm not so crazy talented that it's immediately obvious. Like Michael Reeves, the fucking robot guy, he oozes charisma, he's a meme joke machine, and he builds crazy robots. Like that channel was always gonna blow up, like guaranteed. You know, occasionally I'll see a comment like, oh, you're really underrated, you deserve more than X amount of subscribers, and it's like, not really, I don't think so. I'm not poo-pooing myself by saying this, by the way, and I do appreciate those compliments and stuff. Like, don't worry, I know what I'm good at. Like if I was doing this 5 or 6 years ago, I'd probably be bigger, because YouTube was just less saturated with content back then. But what I think is gonna happen with this channel, if I keep this up, and I enjoy it, so I probably will, is I will slowly accumulate people who appreciate my opinion and perspective on things, and that's what they'll come back for. Or it might just completely die. Who knows, right? But I don't think I'll ever run out of content, so to say, because I'll always have things that I'm thinking about, things I want to say about stuff, and there's always going to be people saying dumb shit for me to feel like I want to make arguments against it. You look at my content, I don't have like a consistent shtick. Like, I guess I did the politics and representation in gaming stuff a few times, but generally, like, I have a little bit of dumb e-drama shit. I have these casual commentaries where I just ramble largely about myself or just whatever unfiltered stuff is going through my mind recently. I have little sprinklings of social and political commentary. I have like media and gaming analysis. Like, even the format of my videos vary quite a lot. I enjoy doing all these different types of things. But when you're small like me, I think that's actually a bad idea. Like, if I just wanted to get big, I should probably just focus on one of those things and spam it. But I can't really do that. I think that's a surefire way for me to get really bored. Like, I've noticed a lot of the really successful YouTube channels, apart from really rare cases where their quality is so high, like ContraPoints or something, most other channels like spam like crazy. They grind, bro. But even if I had more free time, I don't think I could do that. And this isn't me like disparaging those who do that. That's more like me saying I can't really do anything unless I actually really want to. Okay, lastly, let's talk about Trump, because he has been on an absolute mad one the last few weeks. A lot of it has been pretty funny, like the stuff about how he couldn't drink water properly or walk down a ramp properly. I mean, that's not funny in and of itself. It's funny because of how he responded to it. But I want to focus on something that I thought was so disgusting, it actually surprised me. Yeah, even at this stage. So what I'm talking about is this tweet. So basically there was this video that went kind of viral of an old guy, I think a peaceful protester, who approached the cops. He didn't seem to be particularly threatening, at least from what footage we had available. It looked like he was just trying to speak to them or hand something back. And then there's a call from one of the cops to shove him back. So a couple of them did. He fell really hard on his head, started bleeding out his ear. I mean, the sound his skull made when it hit the pavement was pretty harrowing. And yeah, just a bad situation, somewhat unfortunate. Although you'd question why that much force was used in the first place. To then take that incident and smear the guy who got severely hurt. I mean, he was still in critical condition when he tweeted that. He might still be, I'm not sure. But attacking just this one singular person with this baseless bullshit coming from the country's highest authority is so disgusting. And you know, Trump has said horrible stuff before, but to just single out this random nobody who has no platform, he's not like a famous person, he doesn't have like the basis or the reach to respond adequately, right? He was literally in critical condition when this tweet was put out, so he had that to worry about already. Not to mention how this might affect family members. Like, he named the guy and essentially called him a terrorist because he suggested he might be Antifa, who according to him are terrorists. And you're just throwing that out there with no evidence. I don't know, it was just a new low. It may not be the worst thing he's done in terms of overall harm caused. Yeah, there's so many other things you could point to for that. You know, the inaction and rhetoric around COVID, which was absolutely disastrous, not adhering to the Paris Climate Agreement, all that sort of stuff is obviously dog shit, but damn, dude, like, I don't know, this felt especially shitty to me. Like, imagine having your name dragged through the mud like that, maliciously by one of the most powerful people in the world. But then I guess this is also the person who put out full-page ads in newspapers to call for the death of 5 innocent black men for allegedly raping a woman, and I think he stands by those calls to this day. I don't know, I guess in the back of my mind, for some reason, I always had this feeling that he's actually just an incompetent moron, but I guess now it's like much clearer to me that he's also like very obviously a piece of shit, on top of being a moron too, of course. Something that's kind of funny is I've noticed a trend on poll lately where people now just say don't care, still voting Trump, because I think there's like a growing number of people ragging on Trumpists there now, and you know, they say stuff like, you know, just look at the track record, state of the country. It's kind of embarrassing. And as a response, other people have started to both ironically and unironically say still voting Trump, you know, putting an end to any sort of pretense that they actually hold any principles or have a backbone. And that has now been flipped to be like, oh, look at how mad they get when I say that. Soy. I don't know, it made me laugh. I never get tired of reading a dumb 4chan post because I can look at it with some level of like superiority, you know? It's almost like watching the id of society's hive mind just battle it out, just incoherently slinging shit at each other. And you can see them all like trying to struggle with who's actually ironically memeing and who's not. They're just a bunch of degenerate, neat animals, right? Thing is, like, I could understand 4 years ago, I could somewhat understand like the appeal of Trump. why people might like him, even if I thought they were like wrong or misguided or whatever. Like, at least the guy has pretty good comedic instincts. I think most people should be able to admit that. But at this point, for the people who still like him, it's like, I don't know. I don't have any sort of understanding anymore. And I'd say I'm a pretty understanding person overall. Like, at this point, you've just completely drank the Kool-Aid and decided not to engage with reality. Damn, man. Like, I used to believe in people, you know, when I was like a kid. I used to think grown-ups knew what they were doing, that they were smart. But yeah, all that's faded away now. Feels bad, man. Alright, I think that's where I'm going to end it, boys and girls. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. See you next time. Bye-bye.